Hey guys, Udub Ultra here. Welcome back to the channel. Bringing you a video this time walking through my settings here for the LG 45-inch ultra-wide OLED. Now specifically this is the LG45GR95QE. So first rendition of their 45-inch ultra-wide monitor. I know there's new versions coming out, and so I just want to note that. Now, real quick, on the intro here before we really jump in and get started. First and foremost, I want to note that all the settings we're going to walk through here, these are just at my preference, right? This isn't for like professional calibration or anything of that nature. This is purely just the settings that I like to use. Again, I tend to prefer a punchier, more colorful picture, so just want to note that, but really this will just be giving context specifically to all of my POV videos. Now, with that said, this being the first video of this series, I do want to start doing this going forward. Basically, the idea being every time I change my settings, I'll upload a new video of this type to walk through the settings, and that way everyone has a context for what my POV videos are using, right? More specifically, the videos going forward will include a link to the video, the settings video, I should say, with which, well, the settings that I'm using at the time. Now, this will probably be the only settings video I do for this monitor, just because I am pretty well and comfortable with the settings that I have now, but just want to note that for the future, especially as we, again, change monitors and everything for the channel in the future, that I'll be doing this more often, and again, there will be a link basically for each video, so you know what settings I'm using in the POV video that you're watching. Now, with that, we're going to go ahead and do this one thing at a time. Now, really just walking through monitor and then my desktop HDR settings. Now, first, we're going to go through monitor settings here. Now, I want to note as we're going through this, before I jump into the settings menu, right now, HDR is turned on from my video source, in this case, PC. That is relevant. I'll dive into that later in just a minute, but first, we're just to note that because a lot of these settings are going to be blacked out or grayed out, and I can't adjust because the video source is currently turned on for HDR. Now, with that, real quick, just going through here. So, first off, game mode, set to gamer 2. Game adjust, right? VRR is on. Black stabilizer, I cannot adjust because HDR is on currently. Going to picture adjust, right? Brightness is all the way up, maxed out to 100. Sharpness, 60. Again, this could be preference, but I found 60 to be the number I like. Now, really, there's not much else you can change or update here, right? I am using HDMI as my my input. Now, again, aspect ratio, I always keep it at original. Just this is a good, useful way of just making sure that you're actually displaying the right resolution. And then let's see. Pretty much everything else here, this is just like lighting, background lighting, changing and customizing some of the keys. And then input compatibility version is set to 2.1 AV. Now, for those wondering, the reason I do this is just because this monitor, at the time I got it, I don't know if it's been fixed with firmware updates, but was a little finicky with trying to use 2.1 PC. It was really trying to force a 4K resolution. Now, in my opinion, DisplayPort was the easiest to set up because it actually was like plug in and play. To get this working though, because my work laptop is actually plugged in through DisplayPort. You have to use custom resolution utility or CRU, which is what I did here in order to get the work. Basically, I had to delete the 4K resolutions off the monitor, but yeah, I just want to note that. Now, these are all my settings here. Again, it can't adjust quite really anything because HDR is turned on. But now this is going to go into a very relevant point I want to bring up for this monitor. So first and foremost, to do that, I'm going to turn off HDR in the desktop. All right, HDR is off. Now, what you'll see is a lot of these settings I can adjust now, right? Now, the reason this is important, especially if you're someone with this monitor but didn't know this, this is one of those screens. I know some screens do this. I can't really think of any specifics off the top of my head. Your settings that you make in SDR mode here affect HDR, right? So the settings that you change, right? If I were to go in here and adjust black stabilizer, right? Because now I can actually select it. And if I adjust this all the way down to 0 or 100 and then turn HDR back on, my HDR image will look different than before, right? And so again, just to reiterate, your SDR settings and everything that is here will affect HDR picture. They will carry over. So really want to note that I found that through Reddit, and this was again a while back ago with just setting up the monitor in general. But I encourage you to, if you again are curious about this, test it out yourself. You'll be able to see that, for example, if you change color temperature in SDR mode, right? Because you can actually adjust it here. Then you'll go back to HDR and realize things are, temperature looks different. So Want to note that, but again, that is, I think that's probably the most important element of adjusting this monitor, is just to remember that and go through these settings and then turn HDR back on. Now, of course, again, Gamer 2 obviously is what I had selected. Now, Black Stabilizer, now that I can select it, right, I've set this to 60. Again, I encourage you to play with this, but again, my preference here for that has been 60. Now, picture adjust, right, I can actually make these changes now. So brightness obviously was 100. Contrast, I've set to 55, just one step up. I'm pretty sure the default was 50, but put it to 55, right? Sharpness was at 60. Now, of the gamma modes, personally, I found I just like mode 2 the most. And again, that seemed to be the kind of consensus even when looking through Reddit. Again, you can change it, right? Mode 2 makes it brighter. You can kind of see it probably adjusting a little bit on screen. But again, mode 2 is what I find to my preference. And then color temperature. Now you can set to warm. I know a few people have commented, for example, that the picture looks cool to them. Again, that's just because I have it set to medium. Again, personal preference, but you can set this to warm. You could even make a custom profile if you wanted to, or manual. But like I said, I do prefer medium here. Now, I have made no adjustments to 6 color. All right, you can make all these adjustments here. Now, these are all by default set to 50. Nothing, I've done nothing here. Now, black level, high or low, I set this to high. Again, you can make this low if you want to, but again, all the videos you're seeing, right, are using these settings. So set to high. And then everything else is still the same. But like I said, just please remember this if you're going through this monitor, really setting up for the first time. Like I said, dial in your SDR settings. If you want to use these, by all means, go for it. But dial in SDR and then go back in, turn your HDR back on. And again, those settings will carry over. Now, with that said, let's just go into the desktop settings here real quick. Now, personally, and this is just out of also the convenience of use on my gaming desktop, I'm really not concerned about navigating through Windows and SDR. So I always keep HDR on. Now, to compensate for this, what I do is I've set this SDR brightness to 91. Okay, so just with Windows HDR in general, especially with desktop use, the brightness always goes down. I believe the default was like 50, or maybe it might be even lower. It's something like 30, but either way, I turned this to 91 just for navigation. Because like I said, I don't really do any kind of I don't do any work or anything, or really navigate on desktop that often with my gaming PC. I pretty much turn it on and start running games. So it's just easier personally for me to leave that on. Now, auto HDR I do have turned off, just because to this point I've just personally been using RTX HDR as my solution for SDR games. So I have turned this off and just exclusively use RTX HDR right now. Now, I did want to note here, because these are some old settings from some old POV videos for anyone who was been watching my channel for a while. I did originally have an NVIDIA control panel, some custom settings here, specifically adjusting brightness up a little bit and then adjusting gamma to I think like 1.03, and also digital vibrance, which I think I put at 55%. But again, I've returned all these back to default, right? Ever since really adjusting and learning about the SDR mode and those settings carrying over. I put all this back to default and have had no issues, but I do encourage anyone to just remember this menu, right, in your NVIDIA control panel if you do want to make some adjustments to the picture kind of beyond what you can do by default with the monitor, and if you just don't feel like getting a service remote, this is a useful just area where you can make adjustments. But for me, in my case, and all the videos you've been watching, especially recently, the past several months, these are all default. So I'm going to go and close that window. Now, that's pretty much it for all of the settings you can adjust. Again, this is assuming, not using the calibration remote if you order one. I want to be clear that I'm not running any other background settings. Like I said, I prefer to keep my calibration really and as close to default as possible. What I mean by that is I don't want to have to go through the trouble of doing a service remote or anything like that. So again, you can do that if you really do want to, again, dial in settings more. I personally have been satisfied with these. Now, I did want to note here just one thing real quick. So this, again, I would encourage anyone with Windows 11 specifically. If you have Windows 11, along with the settings I've done, go ahead and do the HDR display calibration. Now, I have followed these to the it's one of those basic walkthroughs, like if you did it on PS5 or another console, where it's like a certain brightness image and a certain dark image, and you just kind of like make the square disappear or barely visible. It's just 4 screens that you adjust. Again, I calibrated that just per the directions, but I do encourage anyone to go through that if you want to set up a profile. What I will say about my calibration though is the very last screen, it lets you set saturation. I have set that to 60. Okay, so again, I want to be clear, my preference is again for typically your punchier and more colorful picture with, especially with gaming. So that's just the one thing I want to note. If you decide to do the calibration, again, I follow the directions, but the last screen, which does allow you to adjust saturation and preference, just so you all know, I have it set to 60. But with all of that, real quick for context, the slider on that saturation is 0 to 100. So 60 is like just over the, if you want to call 50 default, just over that. But with all that, that is all of my settings here. Now, like I said, this will probably be the only video I do here because I am pretty comfortable with my settings so far. But this video will be linked in all of my POV videos going forward. And then also really just more specifically, as I get new monitors and again, expand the channel and things like that, I will make sure I do a video like this every time I adjust settings. Especially the newer the monitor, the more videos that will be coming up, especially when I initially get it. But I will make sure POV videos from now on do have that reference and have that link so you always know what settings I'm using. But yeah, with that, I appreciate y'all for watching. Please don't forget that like button and subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions at all. Again, especially if you're curious about just anything else in the settings. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for watching again. Please don't forget that like button and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.